Lily and Hudson meet. Hudson clambered up onto the sofa and stretched out. For a 2-year-old golden retriever, he certainly had grown into a very big young man. This is the life, he thought, curling himself up, wrapping his tail around his sand-coloured body. Hudson dozed for ages. His Newmans had gone out, so the house was lovely and peaceful, just how Hudson liked it. Hudson's slumber was interrupted by his Newmans opening the front door, letting in a cold blast of air. He perked up his head and scowled at them, but they didn't notice, not even when he let out a low growl. They were more concerned with the box that they'd brought in with them. "I'm sure they didn't have that when they left here this morning," Hudson pondered. "Hello, Hudson. Did you miss us?" one of the Newmans asked, ruffling the fur behind his ears. Hudson sat up on the sofa and smiled, but his Newmans were hurrying through the house, picking things up and putting things down. The box sat in the middle of the living room floor. "What is that?" Hudson thought. He quietly clambered off the sofa and walked cautiously towards the box. He stretched his neck and reached his head forwards, sniffing the edges, sides and corners of the box. A rustling noise came from inside, and Hudson jumped back. He'd seen boxes before, but they'd never made that noise. The box then started to whimper. He crept up to the box and peered inside. Curled up in the corner was a ball of brown and white fur. He lifted a paw inside and poked the ball. It giggled. He poked it again, and it giggled again. Hudson turned his head to see if he could find his Newmans, but they were fussing in the kitchen. He looked back into the box and was met by a fluffy brown face. He leant in closer and sniffed. The fluffy brown face returned the sniff and then licked him on the nose. Hudson growled. "What are you?" he asked. "Well, everyone calls me Lily, so I guess I must be one of those," said Lily. She held onto the side of the box and pulled herself up. She reached out a paw and tapped Hudson on the nose. "Bump," she said, before falling backwards, her legs flailing in the air. "Can you please not do that?" Hudson grumbled. Lily giggled. "You're grumpy," she yelped as she tried to clamber out of the box. Every time she managed to pull herself up, she fell backwards. "It looks like you've met your new sidekick," one of Hudson's Newmans said, walking back into the living room. "Sidekick? Sidekick?" Hudson thought. "I don't remember ever asking for a sidekick, but I certainly wouldn't mind kicking her to the side, right outside and down the road." The Newman scooped Lily up and took her out of the box and put her on the carpet. Hudson peered at her. She was so small. He was sure that his Newman had called her his sidekick, but perhaps they'd meant snack. Lily sniffed the carpet around where she was sitting. She then walked over to the sofa and sniffed around there. Hudson watched her suspiciously. "What are you doing?" he asked her. "Just sniffing, really, getting used to my new home," she replied. "I think you'll find this is my home, not yours," Hudson grumped. "Oh," Lily said sadly, looking up at him with her big brown eyes. "But I heard those funny big animals talking, and they said I would be living here for ever and ever and ever." Hudson walked towards the front door. "I wasn't consulted in this matter, so I believe you have been severely mistaken. It seems silly you sniffing all around here when you won't even be living here," he said. But, I thought—" Lily started but couldn't finish. She slumped down on the floor and began to cry. "Lily, Lily, don't cry," a Newman said, giving her tummy a tickle. Hey, come on now. I know that Hudson is a big scary lump to look at, but he's a big softy, really." Hudson grinned at the compliment, but quickly composed himself when he remembered he was supposed to be serious and angry. "Lily, why don't you come into the kitchen and see what we've got for you in there?" the Newman said, leading the way. Lily looked back at Hudson, and then towards the Newman, standing at the kitchen door, smiling. She sniffed back a tear and stood up. Hudson sat up proudly, but dropped his shoulders when he saw Lily walking towards the kitchen. "Where does she think she's going?" Hudson asked himself. Lily stood on the carpet by the edge of the kitchen door and sniffed at the lino. She reached out a paw and tapped the smooth surface. "Come on, Lily. You can do it," a Newman encouraged. Lily hesitantly reached a paw out again. "What is she doing?" Hudson asked himself. "Can she go any slower?" Hudson walked up to Lily and gave her a nudge on the bottom with his nose. Lily tumbled forward and slid across the floor on her tummy. She started laughing. "That was fun. Can we play that again?" she asked, smiling up at Hudson. "Hudson, that is no way to treat Lily," a Newman shouted. It's okay, it's fun, Lily told the Newman. It's no use. They don't understand us. They think they do, but those Newmans are a stupid lot, Hudson scoffed. What's a Newman? Lily asked, puzzled. You don't know what a Newman is? Hudson laughed. What are you, like 1 year old? Lily shrugged. Hudson sighed. Newmans are those weird-looking hairless dogs that walk up on their back legs all the time. They wear those strange clothes too. What kind of animal doesn't have a lovely soft fur coat? They can't be normal. Did you have Newmans where you were before here? Lily thought. Yes, but I spent most of my time with other things that looked like me and sounded like me, she said. Oh, well, Newmans don't look or sound like us. They take a lot of getting used to, and they need a lot of training. But they're not too bad, really, Hudson explained. Tap, tap, tap. The noise took Lily's attention away from Hudson. Would you like a treat, Lily? A Newman asked, holding onto a food bowl. No, she wouldn't. They are my treats, Hudson howled. Hudson, shush, a Newman said. It's all right, Lily. You can have one. I thought you said they didn't understand us, Lily said. Hudson turned his head away from her. Lily crept towards the bowl and had a big sniff. She reached her head in and wrapped her tongue around a small biscuit. She carried it to the carpet, dropped the biscuit on the floor, and attacked it with a front paw. That's not how you eat a treat, Hudson said, scooping up the biscuit in his mouth and crunching it. Hudson, that was Lily's treat. You are being really naughty today, a Newman shouted. It's okay. I'm not really very hungry, Lily said. I'm feeling a bit tired. I could do with a nap. Today has been quite stressful. Lily walked towards the sofa and looked up at the comfy cushions. Do you want to get up there? A Newman asked, and suddenly Lily was flying through the air. She landed on the sofa and stretched herself out. I think you'll find that's where I take my naps, Hudson informed her, but she was already asleep. Hudson sat on the floor by the sofa, watching Lily to make sure she behaved herself. There's a good boy, Hudson. Keep an eye on her, a Newman said. Hudson watched Lily as her eyelids fluttered and her legs jiggled. After a long while, Lily stretched and yawned and sat up. She reached out a paw and tapped Hudson on the nose. Bump! She giggled. I thought I told you the rules about that, Hudson grumbled. Lily ignored him and made her way to the edge of the sofa. She looked over the edge. Up there she was miles off the ground. She tentatively hovered out one paw, then pulled it back and held out the other one. Hudson rolled his eyes. Do you want to get down? He asked her. She nodded her head. Okay, climb on, he said, standing alongside the sofa so that Lily could reach his back. She shuffled from the sofa onto his neck and clamped her paws tightly over his eyes. Ah! What's happened? Is it night time already? Hudson panicked. Oops, sorry, Lily whispered, moving her paws to the side of Hudson's head. Hudson lowered himself down onto the carpet and Lily slid off. Oh, living here is fun. So many games. Let's do that one again, Lily squealed. No, we most certainly, Hudson began to say. Lily ran off. What's this? She asked. Oh, that's my tennis ball, Hudson said as she kicked it under the cabinet. What's this? She asked. The television buttons, he told her as she pulled the remote control to the floor. What's this? She asked. Lily scurried off before Hudson could answer. What's this? She shouted. What's what? Hudson asked, following her into the kitchen. What's this? She asked. That's the door to outside, he said. What's that? She asked. Outside is the place that isn't inside, he said. What's this? She asked, running past him. That's upstairs, he told her. What's that? She asked. Upstairs is the place that isn't downstairs, he answered. What's this? She asked. Lily, slow down, please. I'm too old to be tearing about the house like a whirlwind, Hudson moaned. Lily wasn't listening. She was too busy exploring her new home, sniffing at everything she could get her nose on. Hudson clambered up onto the sofa and watched Lily creating chaos, pulling toys out of the toy box, squeaking and rustling and bouncing and shaking everything she found. You're going to be a handful, aren't you, Lily? Hudson muttered, smiling. What's this? Lily asked.